Greetings, friends, and an assurance of solidarity and support from the Global Council of the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines, of which I am the chair. I want to assure you that we stand alongside you in solidarity as you long for justice and for a lasting peace in Mindanao that will enable all people and all communities to live alongside one another in mutual respect and dignity, and a peace that will not only allow, but which will also actively encourage and enable the flourishing of each and every person and each and every community to their full potential. The seemingly never-ending reports of atrocities and slayings continue to shock and astound all decent people who hear of them, as does the impunity which the perpetrators of these horrors appear to enjoy. I visited Mindanao in 2005 as part of a Christian-Muslim peace dialogue. I received an extremely warm welcome from many people, including representatives of In Peace Mindanao, the women of Khadija, and other residents of Barangay 1 near Davao City, where I stayed for several days before travelling to General Santos. As a result of the conversations I had during this visit, I found myself barred from re-entering the Philippines because of the ludicrously alleged close links I was supposed to have, and even funding from Abu Sayyaf, Al-Qaeda, and Osama bin Laden himself. So much for the integrity and truthfulness of the armed forces of the Philippines, and the accuracy of their so-called intelligence services. As part of that visit, there was an International People's Tribunal held in Manila, when we found Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and George Bush guilty of crimes against humanity. We heard horrific evidence of torture, the abuse of children, the displacement of communities, and extrajudicial killings. All this was 10 years ago, in 2005. But sadly, it all continues. And another great catalogue of human rights abuses was laid before the recent International People's Tribunal held in the USA in July of this year. How long, O Lord, how long? The prophet Habakkuk cried out all those centuries ago, and today we still cry out, how long, O Lord, how long will this continue? As I deliver this address, news has come through of the horrific and totally barbaric public executions of Daniel Campos and Belo Cinso, alongside the brutal slaying of Emerito Samarca, all closely involved, as you well know, in the running of the Alternative Learning Centre for Agricultural and Livelihood Development, dedicated to serving poor, indigenous Lumad families and teaching them the value of the land. As happens all too often, my friends, those dedicated to serving the people in your land and improving their lot are denounced as supporters of the New People's Army. And once this accusation is made, their chances of survival diminish so much, and eradication will surely be their fate. This is totally and utterly unjust and heinous behaviour on the part of those whose remit it is to be servants of the state, that is, servants of the people. They are the brigands, they are the murderers, they are the ones who are creating an atmosphere of fear and brutal thuggery. Emerito Samarca had recently attended the International People's Conference on Mining held in Metro Manila, attended by colleagues of mine from here in the United Kingdom, from elsewhere around the world, as well as from the Philippines. He was a man truly devoted to serving the people in the very best sense of the word. Literacy and numeracy schools run by the rural missionaries of the Philippines in their northern Mindanao sub-region have also come under attack and received numerous threats. A recent online post from the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines was entitled "Attacks on Mindanao Lumad Schools and Communities Intensify as Aquino's Military Goes Berserk for Oplan Bayani Han." He describes how the last year of Aquino's administration has meant a virtual bloodbath for indigenous peoples and for Lumad education, as he himself lauds advances in education in his nationwide speeches. How out of touch can the man be? As schools are an integral part of communities, these attacks are in fact an open declaration of the Philippine state's war of annihilation against people's organizations and communities, especially those devoted to resisting large-scale foreign plunder of their ancestral domains. The documentation for your conference outlines the data for these attacks on schools, attacks on communities, attacks on people. The horrifying statistics back up and authenticate these serious allegations, illustrating that beautiful Mindanao is indeed a militarized and plundered land. Our documentation further states that Oplan Bayani Han is the government's war for plunder, a war against the people, just as the so-called war on terror in the earlier years of the century was in reality a war of terror waged against the ordinary people and their representatives, those who stood in solidarity with ordinary struggling agricultural workers, fisher people, those engaged in mining and forestry, lawyers, trade unionists, priests and lay workers, journalists who dared to report the truth, and so the list continued, to the shame of those in power at Malacanang. These abuses were highlighted during the visit of the UN Rapporteur Philip Alston, and in spite of his damning reports, nothing happened, nothing changed, no one was apprehended, no one was brought to face justice. Politicians come up with fine words, they strut the world stage and parade their so-called democratic credentials. But nothing changes. The perpetrators of crimes still go unpunished. Where, for instance, is the butcher of Mindoro? Where is Palparan? Shielded by his cronies in the armed forces of the Philippines, I guess, continuing to evade justice. All the time, actions speak louder than words. The actions from Malacanang speak of an administration that disrespects the people, whose prime duty it is to serve and protect. And of course, it especially attacks those who might appear in any way to threaten the interests of its capitalist cronies and imperialist masters, whose main aim is indeed to use and to bleed the country for their own financial and political purposes. I remember when in 2005 I visited the barangay of Cancayas in Samar and spoke to a group of people gathered on a hillside outside their local school. We were overlooked by a group of AFP soldiers with their weapons, and even infiltrated by one of their number in disguise, taking photographs before he was removed. I asked the people then what was the most important thing that we, as international observers, could do. The united response was, tell people throughout the world what is happening here. Let them know of the torture, the forced disappearances, the removals, the slayings, the stripping of the forests and exploitation of the mines, etc., etc., etc. And that is one of the things I and my fellow members of the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines promise you, my friends, we will continue to do. We will use every means possible to ensure the world knows what is going on here and to educate those people who know little of the realities of life in the Philippines. Furthermore, we will do all we can to ensure that that knowledge leads to action, representations to politicians, campaigns in the social media, a range of profile-raising activities, and so on. From the 22nd of November to the 10th of December, we are calling for global action for Mindanao, campaigning against the intensified US Aquino regime's attacks on the Filipino people, especially those of you who live in Mindanao. We are urging international supporters and comrades to do all they can to highlight both the intensifying attacks of the US Aquino regime on the one hand, and on the other hand, the heroic struggles of the people of Mindanao, including the Lumad and Moro peoples. We urge this to be done through online media, articles and interviews. And we are, further, urging people to conduct lobby and advocacy actions, highlighting recent and current atrocities with their respective governments all over the world. We're seeking to mobilise migrants and overseas workers to organise and educate compatriots and supporters, so they too can play a leading role in this campaign. We are organising a solidarity tour conducted by Filipino activists, indigenous peoples and human rights defenders to cover various nations in Europe during the months of November and December this year. And we will encourage similar tours in other parts of the world. These abuses will be especially highlighted with activities throughout the world on the 10th of December, International Human Rights Day. As the people of Mindanao endure these outrages inflicted by agents of your own government and their allies who act with impunity, be assured, my dear friends, be assured again that you do not stand alone. There are sisters, brothers, friends, comrades throughout the world who are striving to ensure that the weight of world opinion is brought to bear on Aquino and his administration, that the whole culture of impunity will cease, the guilty will be apprehended and punished, and the children, the men and the women of all communities in Mindanao and throughout the Philippines will be able to live together in peace, in freedom, in dignity. There are people, my friends, all over the world committed to standing with you in your heroic struggles, and we will do all we can to ensure the world does know and the world does respond. I promise you, we will be untiring in our efforts to do this. We may cry, "How long, O Lord, how long?" But be assured, the day will come when you will be free, and all the peoples will enjoy the blessings of that freedom. My friends, we are with you in solidarity, and may that solidarity bring the victory. Amen.